Well, welcome everyone to My Modern Myth with another Rest Rounds edition. And just to remind you, Rest Rounds is where we talk heavily about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Specifically, other martial arts can be part of it, but I really like to focus on Jiu-Jitsu, specifically how we continue to do the sport. And today I have my friend JC joining us. Thank you for joining us, JC.
Absolutely. My pleasure. It's an honor to be here, man.
Well, and the honor is mine because JC is one of the guys that helped me continue to stay with jiu-jitsu when I wanted to quit like 3 times. And this is my first year of training. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about his journey, how, he sticks with it through adversity, because as everybody who's trained it knows, it's not the easiest path. There are roadblocks, there are injuries, there's micro injuries, there's a ton of reasons for us to quit. But I want to talk about the reasons that we stay and maybe how to mitigate some of those unnecessary stumbling blocks. Also, I want to frame it. And if we get to it, we get to it. If we don't, we don't. Frame it around this idea of what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. And the issue I kind of have with that statement, where I understand it, but there's more nuance that I've been sitting with recently, because I know you know me. I tend to sit and analyze singular statements like that and be like, well, what does that really mean? What does it mean to be like a duck? Like all these different little quirky things. So if we get to it, I hope, that's great. If not, another episode, who knows? So to kick things off, JC, I'd really love for you to kind of just give your background as it relates to martial arts, and then we can kind of go from there.
Absolutely. Yeah. JC Gerrits, absolute honor to be here, Eric. Thanks for inviting me. My martial arts journey started out in, I believe it was the 1st or 2nd grade. We had moved, my neighbors, him and his dad and his 2 younger brothers practiced karate. I believe it was Shotokan. And they took me to a class that was performed at a church, a local church. And so went and fell in love with it from there. Didn't really stick with that. My parents, ended up having to move. I ended up joining a different school and trained some Kempo karate in Central Oregon for some time. Then moved again, and we moved clear out of town, so it didn't facilitate training martial arts from there. But always still carried the love deep within inside of me. I always had a little bit of an affinity for fighting. So as a result, the kids that lived in the area that I did, that I grew up with, they trained a little bit of martial arts as well. And so we would do little things. We'd just go out in the backyard and we'd either wrap towels around our hands and have little boxing matches or something like that. It's probably not the best idea in the world. No mouth guards or anything. And weight classes were way off because we ranged anywhere from 4 to 5 years older than each other in different sizes.
Whoever shows up weight class.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of lessons learned in that, We used to train we would make our own nunchucks all the time. We'd take little pieces of aluminum piping and nylon cord, run a bolt through them, practice nunchucks. We watched obviously all of the martial arts films. Back then it was ninja movies, and of course, without a doubt, there's of course Bruce Lee falls into that too, saving the best for last. But always was inspired by that. In my 20s, I trained some Taekwondo. Trained that for a couple years, earned my green instructor belt in Taekwondo. Before I went, I had to quit for medical reasons. It was my first instance, my first bout with cancer. When I was medically cleared to start training again in my 30s, I was trained at a little MMA gym in Vancouver, Washington. That trained a little bit of Taekwondo there, a little bit of kickboxing, a little bit of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well. Went on to have some more medical problems, had to step away from it. And then in more recent years, in my 40s, I believe it was 2012, I started training Krav Maga. I needed to get back into it. And trained Krav Maga for a good about 10 years. And then most recently, I earned my brown belt in Krav Maga last September 2022. 2 weeks later, I transferred to Straight Blast Gym here in Portland, Oregon, the headquarters of Straight Blast Gym, MMA gym, where I'm training kickboxing, some Muay Thai boxing, and then more specifically to what we're talking about, diving deeper into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Shortly thereafter, I was invited to become an instructor there, where I instruct some stand-up classes, foundational stand-up classes, and then working towards assistant instructing in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to continue my journey there. So. That said, that's my journey up until this point. It's going to continue on. I have vowed to myself that I will train martial arts until the day I die, no matter what form that looks like. But it's been something that's deeply beneficial for me. So,
well, that's one key that you said at the end there, and I love that journey. It's not like a one shot. It's a journey. Like there's lots of points on this journey. And the key you said at the last statement was for the rest of your life. And when we met was through K4 Men's Work. It was it's a group of men that go through a rite of passage, learn about archetypes and different maps for living as a healthy masculine man and what that even means. And that's a whole separate conversation, but masculinity really is rooted in unique ways in each one of us. And you and I connected on that, where it's more of the warrior lover kind of side of compassion, but also like I'm extremely loving, but I'm extremely violent when I need to be. And I feel like for me and you, that's kind of the best balance of how we embody our masculinity, but it's a lifelong thing. And so creating longevity and durability, is very rooted in this conversation. And that's kind of where I want to take this right now is, when I was in the roundtable with you and we hold each other accountable every week, there was some struggle, there was some excitement. And one thing that I know you did for me, and please, if anything else comes up and you want to talk about, feel free to share. But one thing that resonated was I showed you my excitement for jiu-jitsu and how I loved it. And I was like, oh man, this is amazing. And after 2 months of grinding really hard and doing that ego thing, or that stupid, like, I want to just viciously fight, I started not liking it. I started to be like, I can't do this. This isn't for me. And the one thing that you said, you weren't berating me, but you were saying, but you said you loved this and it was a big deal to you. So are you really just going to walk away from it? Can you talk to that mental place that you were kind of seeing me in, and maybe how it's reflected in you?
Absolutely. Yeah. I remember that well. And I'm in all honesty, Eric, I'm really glad that resonated with you so much. When I was saying that, I had concern that I was going to be too pushy, and try to look, but in all honesty, Eric, that's part of the beauty of the men's group that we were involved in, is keeping each other accountable, and a lot of times it can be easy for us that, even when we find this thing that we're passionate about, that deeply calls to us, and we dive into it, and it's just this beautiful, amazing thing, and we're unfolding these new sides of our personality and discovering things about ourselves and empowering ourselves more, and peeling away the layers of fucking shit that's been put on us for years. We start to run into some challenges. We hit some more challenging points in there, and it can be easy for us to think of like, oh man, well maybe this isn't my thing. I was really into it when I first started it, and I fucking loved it. And now I'm hitting some roadblocks, and I feel like I'm banging my head into a wall, and I'm not seeing the progress, or I'm not doing as good as I think I should be doing. But that's the true journey in it. That's where the true hero's journey lies, is when we come across those obstacles. Because really, as we know, the universe places those obstacles in front of us as opportunities to grow and unfold and become the next greatest version of ourselves. And so it really struck me, the way you were wording it and the standpoint that you were coming from. It really seemed evident to me that you were at one of those pivotal points where you were maybe hitting some plateaus and the body was starting to hurt, which is common with all of us. 90% of the martial artists that I talk to, they talk about they're fucking hurt all the time. Excuse my language. I hope I can curse on here.
Sorry.
Their body aches and they're feeling pains all the time. And you just kind of learn to deal with it. You know, you learn that this is my reality. This is what it's going to take for me to be better. And it's, you find a place to be okay with it. You know, you find a way, to exist in a state of uncomfortableness, if you will, because we know it's for the greater good.
Yeah. And the greater good for me, I had this moment yesterday, I think it was. I had class, and at the end of class, the way our jiu-jitsu class is structured is 45 minutes to an hour of instruction and drilling, and then it's a half hour open mat essentially. And the timer is just going. You can do as many rounds or as few rounds or no rounds, whatever you want. You can just observe. You can sit and talk. And this was the first class in the 3 weeks that I've been at the school where my forearms flared up, and that was really the thing that was keeping me from wanting to do it. Was I can't even grip the steering wheel, you know? So as a father, I have responsibilities. How can I go and justify the sport if I can't drive myself home feeling with security, you know, and I have kids. So you're called to react to that. And the reaction is quit or figure out why your body hurts or how you can mitigate it. And so I learned I had to take a week or two off just to reset my body that I can go back to it. And so this was the first time it happened. And I'm like, oh, here we go again. And so open mat comes and I'm like, yeah, to my black belt instructor, I'm taking my gi top off. I'm like, yeah, I want to roll, but I can't. And he goes, well, you're a better man than me, because you know how it is. Like, you want to go fight, you want to go and do it. And I'm sitting there like talking, and I slowly put my gi top back on, put my belt back on, and I wait for the next round to end. And I just kind of wander back out because I was feeling okay. And I rolled and had a great roll. It was wonderful because I'm learning how to slow down, to keep those injuries at bay, like see the game, to know when to spaz or when to outpour energy and when to slow. And I did it and I felt great. And afterwards, some of that pain came back in my forearms, and I knew I could only do one roll, but I've been trying to do this commitment of at least one roll per class at the end, just to get out there. And even if it means I just go lazy because I'm just trying to keep my body fresh, I get in weird situations and I learn how to handle those situations. But if I just avoid it or I go too hard, then I'm out for 2 weeks and then I want to quit. So there's this real big balance in when I hear about injuries or pain that I'm really trying to figure out, well, how much do we have say over that? And I wonder if you've also seen where, my low back hurts. You know, that's just going to be with me. I have a TBI, I have cervical spine injuries. There are certain things that are not going away, but I've been finding there's certain things we can do. So have you found anything that you specifically have found that works for you to keep that durability, whether it's lifting weights, yoga, not going so hard, taking rounds off, like anything that's limited sort of that pain?
Yeah. A number, a number
Everything.
of different modalities, you know, to kind of mitigate that. You alluded to a couple of them. One, yoga is massively beneficial, for many reasons. You know, one, it keeps us limber, obviously, you know, which is super important in jiu-jitsu, martial arts across the board, but I think even more so in jiu-jitsu. Two, it is super good for injury prevention. You know, and not only prevention, but then when we do get injured, I think we tend to heal a bit faster when we're doing yoga, you know, because it, you know, we're flexing our body, we're getting it into positions that we're not typically in, which it allows more blood flow into those areas, especially if it's joints and, you know, and whatnot. And so that tends to heal. Also for me, Eric, when it comes to yoga, I feel like, it is the perfect balance to the extreme warrior energy that martial arts carries with it.
Yeah.
That yoga tends to be, you know, that yin yang energy, you know, that polar opposite of it, that balances it out so well that we're still moving our body, using it, you know, in the ways that it's intended to do, the way that it's fully capable of doing. Still obviously a mental and spiritual piece to it. as well, but just much more softer and gentler. So it's I think it's really really vital that it's one of the big keys in life is about creating balance, of course, right? And living a balanced lifestyle. When we're too one sided with one thing, we're imbalanced, and it throws things off. So yoga, cold plunge is a huge one. Cold plunge, cold shower, anything within that realm. That's part of my morning practice as my daily startup. As well as the opposite end of that spectrum, the polar opposite of it is sauna. Any kind of
Yep.
the two extremes of the temperatures. Sauna is massively massively beneficial for keeping the body rejuvenated. Uh, and then also too, luckily enough, I am in a cannabis legal state. So THC and CBD, they help me immensely. CBD, CBG, CBN, those are massively beneficial for me. In my experience, they're a much more healthy modality for pain relief than obviously any of the opioids, without a doubt. But even
Sure.
even more so, the over the counter stuff, acetaminophen, ibuprofen, things like that.
Yeah.
Acetaminophen, Tylenol destroys the liver. Ibuprofen goes after the kidneys, and so if you're taking it on a regular basis, you're creating problems there, to where
Yeah.
cannabis, it doesn't have those issues. Um, so within that, those are some of the things that have really worked for me. Like what you said too, learning how to mitigate ourselves and control ourselves in training. One of the big pieces is realizing that when we're in the gym and we're on the mat training, it's you don't have to win all of those matches, right? That's the time where we want to make errors. That's the time where we don't necessarily need to go 100%. Learn when to express ourselves, with all of our energy, and have those bursts of energy, and then relax and chill, and then work on technique and
Mm.
flow, and positioning and stuff like that, rather than I have to win this particular round, which as men, I think is
Yeah.
as a generalization, is a really, really common thing. Um, I think that's one of the reasons why they say that women have a tendency to learn at a little bit faster rate.
Mm.
They're not necessarily falling back on attributes, strength and size. They have to
Yeah.
have good technique in order to make it work. So, um, yeah, you alluded to something there too, Eric, that I wanted to touch on. Going, see if I could circle back, when you were talking about driving in the car, with your kids.
Yep.
Ava, I believe, is your oldest, correct?
Oh, she's the
Um,
youngest.
or youngest, rather. Okay.
Mhm.
That was one of the pieces that really stuck out for me, Eric, when you were talking about, you had told me some stories previously, that maybe she was taking a little bit of interest in it, but she saw
Mhm.
you doing it. She saw the old man taking on something, that was really brutal and really kind of punishing himself, and was really putting himself through the rigor. And that spoke to me hugely, because I'm at a point in my life now where, with my kids, they're grown, 19 and 27, and I know I now see the value in modeling after seeing my kids become adults, and then they start replicating and recreating what I have, the example that I have given to them. Um, it's now it's now become even more important to me as a father, and even a grandfather of two now, that I've got fucking people watching me, man. And if I want if I want them to be the greatest version of themselves, then I need to show them how to do that within myself. And that means going into those challenging moments and throwing ourselves into the abyss, and then fighting through and trudging through and finding a way to get through those challenges, and those
Mm.
things that all of those little moments that come up, where it's like, I should quit this. Why am I doing this? Am I delusional? Whatever, that negative self-talk that we do. Um, and so knowing that you had that you had your daughter watching you on that, I felt like that was a really important example for you as a father, and as a brother, to say, hey, you
Yeah.
got people watching you. This isn't just you, man. This isn't just you.
Yeah.
So.
It's a good point. And that modeling piece is ever evolving, I'll say. And it taught me a lesson in my kids liked jujitsu. They did not like takedowns. They didn't like the wrestling from the feet point.
Mhm.
And to that point, they acquiesce. I don't, but if you get mats at home, daddy, we'll wrestle you. Like they just want to fight me. And so that's what we do. It's a cool. But what I did realize is they really want to see me kick people's asses.
Mm.
Like, that's what they I think, but I think there's beauty in that, because when you're a kid, sometimes you look at your father as Superman,
Yeah.
as the toughest, the strongest, the best fighter in the entire world. And the dad knows, well, I'm not, but I love that you see me in that light or whatever. So there's a motivation there where, I do want to show them what it is to work hard and to face adversity. And jiu-jitsu is a wonderful example of that, where I say this example all the time, that even still, I haven't been doing it that long, but I still have the issue of wanting to prematurely tap to pressure,
Mm.
not to pain, because I can't breathe and I get really scared.
Mhm.
But that pressure is not a call to run away. It's a call to make space. It's a call to frame and to find some place to, catch your breath and assess the danger. Is it real, or am I scared? And what I pass on to them, I hope to, is whatever it is that you're willing to face adversity in, face that darkness, that abyss that you're talking about, JC, and you keep coming back to it because you're going to solve this, goddammit, I'm going to
Mhm.
support that. That's your jujitsu. It's
Mhm.
animation. It's storytelling. It's whatever it is that they're into. And if they keep coming back to it, they can't quit, no matter how pissed off they get, no matter how frustrated, take 2 weeks off, but they're like, I've got to do this. That's the arena. That's where I want you to go. Not everyone has to do martial arts. I get it. But I do want everyone, I think you said this too, is you told me you can leave if that's what's best for you. I just want to make sure you leave for the right reason and not the wrong one. And that also resonated, because I was like, you know what? Just like I can't breathe when I'm on bottom or something, it's pause, pivot, make some space, and assess. Is there something else I can do differently? And I could. And that allowed me to stay. And if I would have quit, I would have quit for the wrong reason. And I think that's where pain and regret come in. Would you say?
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt, all of the stories that we hear about people that have near life or near death life experiences, coming back from that.
Mhm.
The common theme that it seems like they all resonate is that the thing that stuck out to them most were their regrets, the things that they regretted not doing, or the things
Mhm.
they wish they would have said, the things they wish
Yeah.
they would have done. Um, and this being a big piece of that, finding those ways to overcome. We Bruce Lee has a myriad of freaking massively empowering statements, but
Yeah.
one of them, that really strikes me for this particular conversation is, with adversity, we are shocked to higher levels. He said, think about a rainstorm. Um, it's horribly violent within the rainstorm, but after that rainstorm passes, everything grows. So it was that we had to go through that challenging moment in order to incur that growth, to catalyze that growth. Really, is what it took. Um, so I think I'm digressing from away from what your point that you were saying, but I think one of the really wonderful things that I've discovered in martial arts is that it nurtures a side of our personality that we didn't really know was there until we started tapping into it.
Mhm.
And when we nurture that side, and we cultivate that side of our personality, we begin to walk around in the world in a much different way than we
Yeah.
did before. Not only, one, because we're walking around with less fear that, somebody is going to, try to physically take advantage of me, or manipulate me in some way, but also all those little micro learning moments that we have every day when we go into the gym, when we get our ass handed to us, on the regular, and learn and building that resilience within us, that comes out in so many different ways in our personality, other than just the fact of like, well, if I get in a fight there, I stand a good chance at winning. We see that in everything we do. We see it in conversation. We see it at
Mm.
work, and how we approach things from there. When we go through challenges in life, whether it be bills or, the things around the household need to be addressed or something like that. It's always some really, at its core, it's some minor inconsequential little obstacle that we can find our way through that isn't really near as threatening as having somebody mounted on you, they're 100 pounds heavier than you, and they got collars in, and they're getting ready to throw an Ezekiel on you,
Yeah.
and you can feel the life getting choked out of you. That's much different than, well, the mailman's mad at me because I parked in front of the mailbox again. Right? um, so it's a really magnificent thing. And it's within our society today, obviously, in it's not necessarily encouraged to be physical and masculine and aggressive, and have, as our founder, the SPG's founder, Matt Thornton, says, have a gift of violence. But really, it is a gift. When he has a saying that, when we're free of the fear of physical manipulation or extortion, we experience a freedom like no other. Um, and it's so
Mm.
pertinent, it's so poignant to the
Yeah.
big practice behind martial arts, and the importance of it, and what it does for us as people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it does a lot. And that statement kind of is interesting because I like the way it's phrased, and I agree with it. I agree with everything you're saying. I don't feel a need to get into a fight. I do feel the reason I was afraid of conflict was because I would catastrophize it and say, well, the worst that's going to happen is I'm going to get into a fight, and I don't want to. But now I realize what danger is and what danger isn't, and in certain ways, and I feel a lot more confident. And it does matter when you feel like, okay, if for God forbid it does go there, I'm probably able to at least not just get mauled and ripped apart. Like, I can defend myself, and there's power in that. And I'm not going to look for fights. And I was at this campfire last week. This guy, he had been drinking. He looks at me. I sit down in the chair, and he goes, "You look like someone I want to fight."
Mm.
Like, what? Why? And I've had that happen to me 3 times in my life. Walking home from bars, the guy says,
Mm.
"Fight him, fight him." They're just 2 drunk guys looking for a fight. Things like that. Where I'm like, "What is it about me? Is it my face? Why do people want to fight me?" But in that moment at the campfire, I'm not like, oh, I'm afraid, whatever. I actually had a conversation with the guy, and he meant well by it, but it's weird because you don't know the motivation of another person, but you do know your own capabilities. You do know your mental capacities. And if you're training yourself in this way where you both have aggression and you have compassion, and I wanted to transition to this because I really like to hear how other people view sport as a mirror to the way they live life. And just, well, I don't know, you had mentioned some things that sounded to me like maybe that's that mirror where you're talking about, when do I explode on people? When do I hold back? When do I change my position and be more fluid versus aggressive? And I'm wondering, for me, it was like I told you, finding pressure instead of quitting. I need to make space and keep going and figure out, like, if this is a pivot or a leave situation. There's a lot of lessons that I've learned that I do jiu-jitsu like I do life. And when I change the way I do jiu-jitsu, I change the way I do life. And I'm curious if you have examples for yourself, how you've seen that manifest in your life.
Oh, without a doubt, yeah. um Speaking, to your point there, um I think one of the ones that comes up really easy in my younger years, I very much like my father figures, I was very quick to explode. Whether, and that meant whether in training or in everyday life. My go-to, if something wasn't going my way was to get explosive, get big, get loud and proud, as my dad would call it. And exert like that fire masculine energy. And it was very, very unserving of me. What it did is it just continued to bring scenarios in my life and situations that were not really in line with who I wanted to be, or the outcomes were rarely ever how what I truly wanted. It's just I was reacting out of a place of fear, being scarcity. Somebody was going to get the best of me, or something that wasn't going to go the ideal picture perfect way that I envisioned. And as I get deeper and deeper into martial arts, and begin to study it more and from a philosophical, spiritual standpoint, and less just physicality, I learned to apply those in that I saw those similar things in my training. If we were sparring or something like that, if somebody's getting the best of me, or I'm not on my game on a particular day, I would try to go harder, and I would try to be more aggressive and try to be more explosive. And then it would just serve to burn myself out and then get my ass handed to me on an even bigger level, because I'm trying to go too hard rather than, than thinking and plotting. And as you were saying, get into a position, not necessarily a desirable position. And rather than trying to spaz out and freak out and trying to get my way out of there, which only serves to put yourself into an even worse position when we spaz. But really thinking about it is like, take a breath, just calm, just relax. Hickson Gracie talks about that in his book, Breathe, about all of life's moments. We can address those from a much greater standpoint. If we just take the time to breathe and calm and come to a place of sense of peace and serenity. And, the, you've got a big, heavy guy crushing down on you, and, everything in your being is saying, I just want to tap because I want to be out from under this person. But we know, if if we find that place, if we go to that happy place, is the, kind of cliche term that people will use, realize that these are just physical sensations, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is my training partner. They're not going to kill me. Right.
Yeah.
I know of no one that has died on the mats at the gym that I train at. I would imagine that's probably been the case at your gym as well. And nor do my training partners want to kill us. If you're at a gym where your training partners are trying to kill you, just as a side note, maybe find another gym. But, that said, they are there to challenge us and push us. And so their job is to find those little weak points in us, to bring those out, to bring up those pieces in us that say, I want to fucking quit this. And then facilitate a way for you to find that path through. And that's been hugely beneficial for me, to walk around with a little bit more peace and knowing that everything's going to be good. You just got to breathe your way through it, man.
Yeah. The breath is huge. To circle back and then continue, there was some lessons you shared about, cold shower, cold plunge, yoga, things like that. And you did it in the morning. And I just wanted a quick note that I do it at night after practice. That's the only way I can go to sleep, because, 6:30 to 7:30, 8 o'clock, you're rolling and I can't sleep. I still can't, even when I do go to sleep, it's like maybe midnight, 1 a.m. that I can finally get to bed. But without yoga, every night I do like 30 to an hour. When I do jujitsu, it's like the hour-long restorative type yoga, and the breath, it's good for mobility, but it's also like a very one that centers me and it calms me down and gives me opportunity to do that, so it can take my mind out of, hey, your training partner, I know he wasn't trying to kill you, but my brain still says, but he was. and you got to be ready. You got to stay ready because he's going to jump in the door anytime. And it's like, that's the only way I can get my brain to just disengage that way. Cause I know I'm safe, but my body's like, you know, like spazzing out, and I'm like shaking in my sleep, and I like blood pressure. It's just crazy. I can't sleep. But after yoga and a cold shower, cause my body is hot naturally, then after jujitsu, it's like 100 and some degrees, just nasty. So I got to take a cold shower. Otherwise I can't lay in bed. I'm sweating. I'm freaked out. I'm panicky, whatever. And I know logically. So it takes something outside of my own brain, someone to guide me through. Thank you, YouTube, to guide through these routines that just allow me to breathe, as you say. And the tie in there that I wanted to hit was your shirt says a limited mind cannot think freely, I believe.
Yeah.
And we just got done talking about how an unlimited mind can explode. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts on the difference between limited and unlimited mind, because boundaries are important, but is it where we place the boundary that makes the difference? Because limited mind would be like, jujitsu's stupid, it's gay, and I don't want to roll around with guys in sweat, you're just a homo, like all that kind of really stupid, ignorant kind of stuff.
Totally.
And then the unlimited mind would be like, I do jujitsu. It's the best martial arts in the world, and I can beat anyone at any time, anywhere on the streets. I'll pull guard on the streets, bro. You know, and so it's like, whoa, it's in the middle somewhere. I'm sure of it.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I think obviously boundaries are important for our personal sovereignty, right? We realize that, you know, through our day-to-day life that we need to create boundaries in certain areas of, you know, of our being, whether it be at home, with our relationships, whatever. Those are extremely important. To me, the saying is speaking to the point of knowing that really the only thing that holds us back is our own selves, right? Whether that means you know, self-doubt, self-sabotage, whether we allow other people's opinions of us to influence us too much, we try to take on those roles that other people place upon us, that becomes self-limiting. You know, thinking, you know, talking more about what you said, you know, about having this judgmental mindset of like, oh, you know, BJJ, you're rolling around with other dudes on the mat and you're sweating all each other, all of these things. Well, yeah, that's a hugely limited way of thinking about things, you know, and that like if two men are rolling around on the mat, the only thing that can mean, you know, that it's a homoerotic, you know, experience. And it's, you know, rather than that really seeing it for the greatness that it is, it's hugely holistic thing that it is that like, you know, yeah, there's times where you have somebody's taint sitting on your forehead, you know, he's getting ready, right. He's got you north-south and he's getting ready to throw an armbar on you. That's the last thing I fucking care about. I'm thinking about my arm getting broken off right now, you know? You know, but within that, looking at the bigger picture of it, the bigger aspect of it, in that like, there's this brotherhood that's going on, right? In that these two beings, whether it men, women, you know, anything out of the binary, it doesn't matter. You know, in that we're finding a way to challenge each other and really force one another into these deep, dark places. But it's truly coming from a place of love, right? When we go in there and we're training, when we have this beautiful camaraderie with our training partners, for a lot of reasons. You know, one, when we do challenging things together, it brings us closer together. But then when we push each other, hold each other accountable, and know that like, this person's going to give me their best. One, because they want to get better, but two, they want to see me get better too.
Yeah.
Because when I get better, I evolve, I become a much greater person. I help them become better as well. And so it's, you know, thinking about it from that standpoint, seeing the bigger picture of there's this beautiful spiritual moment, you know, that this in this relationship, and really finding the overall encompassing meaning and purpose behind what two people are doing. It doesn't even have to be two people, but
Yeah.
just the act in it together.
Yeah. Well, and that brings me to kind of this maybe closing topic. And I mentioned it earlier that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. You just kind of alluded to that, where I want you to get stronger. I want to get stronger myself. And so we challenge each other. The thing I have with that expression is that's not always true, because I've seen people come into jiu-jitsu and not get killed, but not get stronger. They actually leave and avoid. So I think it's that which doesn't kill you. It depends on how you react to it that makes you stronger or weaker. So it's kind of like, if I'm getting armbarred and submitted every night, and I just get, woe is me, and I'm wasting everyone's time. And I tell myself that story, whatever that story might be, I'm not taking the opportunity to get stronger. I didn't die. Well, that doesn't kill you, makes you stronger. Well, I feel like I'm a waste of space. Okay, well, you have to challenge that belief if you want to get stronger, because right now you've found a weakness because you didn't die, and now you're afforded the opportunity to look at it. And hopefully, if you have good people in your life, they can help reflect that, like you did for me. I would have not gotten stronger. And because of our conversations and your accountability and your ability to allow me to leave, and you would still support me, I know I still had your support, but because you gave me that kind of tough love, in a really gentle way, by the way. It wasn't like, oh, Jesus Christ, dude, like a flip flop. Yes, no, yes, no. It wasn't like aggressive, but it was like, well, I'm going to reflect back to you what you said and how it doesn't quite align. So I just want to make sure that, if you leave, you do it for the right reason. It gave me the chance to say, am I getting stronger by making this choice? Is it truly in my best interest, or is it going to be a better benefit for me to stay? And I mean, the evidence that I've seen in my life is I'm stronger now than when I was going to quit. And to look back and say, okay, yeah, I had some time off the mat, tattoos, injuries, all that stuff, to forego and just not see this progress I've made and where I'm at today. I got second place in a tournament, in no-gi and gi. Like, that's a huge accomplishment. I wouldn't have had that if I would have quit. I wouldn't have been able to go and fight and be like, damn it, like, I can do this. And feel that pride in myself, and to train my body for a purpose. Like, it's not lifting weights, it's not pull-ups. It's now I'm training because I want my jiu-jitsu to be stronger. I'm doing mobility drills that used to kind of make me go, I don't want to do these. But now I know that they're making me better at jiu-jitsu. I can shrimp out of things now. I understand how to hip out and whatnot, because I've practiced that move enough. When I was like, I don't want to do that. Like, because I don't understand what the purpose of it is. And now I do. And when you train for a purpose, it changes the way you engage with this tool. And it's our mind and our body that we own, and it writes our life story. So how are you writing it? So when I talk about these expressions and I analyze them, it's because they don't make sense to me and I need them to. I believe them, but they don't quite make sense. So, I wanted to pitch that out to you to see if that, triggered anything in you and that reflection.
Yeah. I guess I hadn't really thought about it from that perspective, but there are definitely times, where I see little aha moments within that, little progressions, that apply, that, like what you were saying, that, like, you can see the phrase, you can see the quote, whatever it may be. Trying to think about some specific ones, but seeing, understanding what it means, but not really knowing exactly how it fits into our life. And I think martial arts, jiu-jitsu specifically, really highlights that. It brings, gives us examples, little micro examples, to where, if we can see it in that smaller context, then we can extrapolate it, right? And then we can begin to apply it to everyday life. Because so many of the little lessons that we learn on the mat, as we spoke, can be applied to life. And so, I hope I'm answering, addressing your question as you asked it. Trying to think about some specific ones there. I know for me, example, I'll go back to Bruce Lee again. He's one of my faves, as you know. He is my fave. But he said the average man or excuse me, the successful warrior is the average man with laser-like focus.
Mm.
And obviously that can be that's from his standpoint, that's applying that to martial arts, in that meaning that like in order to become successful at this, in order to become good at it, we need to get focused. We need to tune out all of the things that don't matter when we're on the mat. We need to pay attention to the literal moment of what's going on, whether we're drilling, whether we're learning a new technique, whether we're rolling, whatever it may be. Warm-ups, can be applied to that as well, too, the importance of warm-ups. But thinking about, when we're on that mat, it's a lot of times it can be easy for the mind to wander. You're thinking about work, what happened at work today, or, a difficult conversation that you had or something like that. And as we go away from the immediate moment, the present moment, things start to fall apart. We start to lose a grasp on what's going on at this immediate moment. We start paying attention to something else rather than, where's my opponent's hips? Where's his weight?
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. He's sneaking an armbar here, but what he's really looking for is a Kimura. He's setting me up. And I'm just paying attention to this little thing that's going on. Grips is another one. I had a wonderful moment the other day with one of the high level brown belts. I was rolling with him, and much smaller guy. I think he's only about 140, but he super super technical, and I was so focused on breaking his grips the entire time, the first part of our roll, and I was just breaking grips and only paying attention to his hands and playing the hand fighting game. And next thing you know, he's on my back and he's applying a rear naked choke, and I'm like, what's going on here? And so we talk about it afterwards, and he's like, you're focusing too much on these things that are right in front of you, and you're disregarding all of these other things that were going on in the match as a result. And that's perfectly, that applies to life 100%. We get so focused on this challenge that we have right in front of us that, yes, it needs to be addressed in some way, shape, or form. But don't lose track of all this that's going on around out here, because there might be another option out there that we're not paying attention to because we're so focused on this thing. There might be a way out. There might be another vector, another angle that we could cut. And then next thing you know, we have the upper hand. We're taking the back and we're applying the rear naked choke, something to that effect, 100%. 100%.
I love that. And that's exactly, for me, the best part about jiu-jitsu is the life application, how it does make you, I'd guess say it didn't save his life, but it helped calibrate his life. It makes things make more sense. It brings peace and balance. And I like to reflect deeply on sport because I believe it's a metaphor and it's a mirror for our own lives. And I think the reality is, maybe not the reality, my assumption of the reality is majority of the people who do practice jiu-jitsu are like me and maybe want to go compete a bit, but aren't trying to become professionals, high level, world champions. I think that's probably, at least where I've trained, a small fraction. People want to be competitive, but they're not, their whole life isn't this sport where they're trying to get sponsorships and live this lifestyle. And maybe that's not fair to say, but it seems that the greatest gift for longevity's sake is in these lessons. And maybe it's fair to say, to stick with this sport, you have to continually look at why you're doing it, why, and how you can adjust things to overcome or to be sustainable. And sometimes it's going less often until you figure things out, or figuring out a new way to take care of your body, or and numerous different examples of how we can do that. But it's really specific to, what do you want out of the sport? I wanted to be a competitor. And then I was like, do I though? I want to compete, but in my first tournament, my jaw is still kind of messed up, from the guillotine. And so I'm like, is it worth it? I proved to myself I could do some stuff, and I'm competitive and I can still compete in open roles with different friends, and it's not like I live and die by the result of it, but it's a fight to me. It's not so patty cake, like we went at it, and so I get that satisfaction. I think that's important, but I don't need to risk my body the way I did at that tournament, because some people are out there cranking on things, trying to, like it's their life is on the line. And as a father, I can't take that risk. And so I have to decide, is that why I'm here? To be this high level competitor and throw it all on the line and risk it? Or can I just go a little bit, scale back, maybe compete once a year if I want to, and just really fall in love with the gym and fall in love with the people and try and build a community where we can foster this idea that we are doing something incredibly difficult together and it can enhance our lives, and just give yourself a real chance to fall in love with the sport or walk away, but at least know the relationship was for you or it wasn't. And to me, that's the game. And that's why I want to talk to people like you and different guys, is because part of the reason that it's scary is because you don't know who's in the sport. So people will be listening and like, I've never done it, and I'm intimidated to walk into a gym. I'm intimidated to email the coach and say, hey, can I check out the gym? Because who are these people that are in the gym? Are they all killers? And some gyms are like that. And some gyms are super casual. I've been to ones that are not competitive at all. And they're just having a good old time and learning something, exercise, whatever. Then there's some competition focused ones, and there's some ones that are just kind of in the middle. Like there's so many ways you can go about doing the sport, and you just got to find that right gym. And, closing thought, I just like to hear, what were you looking for in a gym, and how did you find it, or what did you find at SBG that made you be like, this is the spot for me?
Oh, going for me, Eric, going to SBG was pretty serendipitous, to be honest. It's kind of a long, lengthy story. I hope we have time for it, but as I said, I had been training Krav Maga for the last 10 years or so, and I had recently found myself into just an amazing relationship with a woman, and I wanted to share martial arts with her. It's been so beneficial to me. It's something I wanted to share with her. The state of the kind of the world that we live in right now. She lived in Portland, Oregon. I thought, man, it would be really nice if she had some, kind of self-defense, ability to learn that. And so we tried to facilitate that in many ways. It didn't, with me living so far away, it didn't facilitate, her schedule didn't really have the time in order for her to be able to do that. So, so we started entertaining, well, maybe what if I went to a different gym closer to where she lived? My schedule was a little more open, and I was able to move around a little more freely. I could work remotely and stuff like that. And so started entertaining that idea, of what that would look like. And checked out a couple gyms, checked out 10th Planet. They obviously have a massive following, and are hugely successful. But then also, literally a block from her office was a Straight Blast gym. The headquarters of Straight Blast gym, and she had thrown that up. She's like, there's a martial arts gym, right next to my office. And so SBG had been on my radar for some time. I never really did a deep dive into their history or what their ethos was or anything. Anyway, so I started digging into it, and really what did a lot of it for me, Eric, was hearing Matt's philosophy and his methods to training. He came from the Jeet Kune Do world, broke away from it because he didn't feel that they were sticking with what, Bruce had taught us, and that take all the functional elements from the different martial arts and throw away the stuff that doesn't work, keep what works, and then make it essentially your own.
Sure.
And had some real aha moments, especially his introduction to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, to where, I really fell in love with that core philosophy of why he was training, and the different techniques that he put into his curriculum. So that was a big piece of it for me. And then we went there, we did an orientation, And unfortunately, it didn't work out with my partner in terms of her being able to train or having a desire to train. It just wasn't. She very much deeply comes from the lover house, so it's not something that really resonates with her.
Yeah.
But she respects it, and she fully supports me on it and loves the fact that that it's something that I'm so passionate about. Um, yeah, so started training there, and then really just a series of things came about, that I got deeper and deeper into the gym, got invited to start instructing there. Now that's leading into, doing some work with, with the folks that may be having challenging times in life, and they're putting together a
Mm.
program to help support people and,
Yeah.
outside of the gym. Um, so those are pieces that were hugely important to me. I knew by going there, I was going to step up my game drastically from the gym that I had come from. There's a much deeper talent pool. I think there's only probably maybe 50 or 60 people, 60 adults that I was training Krav Maga with at the gym that I was at, to where the SBG that I'm at now has over 500 members there currently. And there's at least 10 or 12 black belts there, to where I was training with one black belt before. So that was a big piece in it. And then of course, the final piece that really brought it together for me, was I was concerned, as a lot of people are, and kind of what you spoke about before, was that I didn't want to go to a gym where it was just a bunch of meatheads trying to kill each other. That's not what I was about. I wanted to learn good technique and have good training partners and camaraderie and a good community. And though there's some big dudes there, there's some meatheads there for sure, in terms of, some muscle houses.
Yeah.
But just wonderful, wonderful people that are there to help us grow and evolve, and there for the same purposes. And the community outside of this gym is phenomenal. There's been numerous times where people are helping each other out. I see all the time where, hey, I'm moving. Can we is anybody free this weekend to help me move? Or a couple months ago, there was a newer white belt. I think he'd only been training for 3 or 4 months, and uh, single dad. His car got broken into. They stole all of his
Mm.
training gear and his car seat and a bunch of other stuff. And he wasn't financially super well off. And so he was struggling to replace that stuff. And the folks at the gym, we all heard about it. And so everybody pitched in, got him a new car seat, got him all new
Wow.
pads and gear and some new gis and stuff to keep him going. And that's really something that I didn't see that a lot at the gym that I was at. But it's super prominent in SBG, and I'm extremely grateful to be a part of that. So that piece to me was massively beneficial, especially coming from a line of, coming from men's work where it's all about community and
Yep.
accountability and brotherhood. And so to have that, to be able to train in the physical form, but then also have that piece there at the gym too, that community is really super important to me.
That's beautiful. And that's, I think my heart's in that same place in the same season in some ways, where I really do, serving K4 and doing the captain's thing and leading some cohorts of men and being in the round table and all of this really did foster in me a desire to help people. And in doing so, it's like, it's repurposing my story and sharing it through vulnerability and empowerment and trying to model that, like you said at the beginning, is modeling it for others. So it's not like, here's my curriculum, I'm going to take I have a 12-week program that we're going to go through at my gym, but it's just trying to create a culture of openness and modeling how to go about doing that. And that's something I'm pausing, pivoting, and pursuing, because I just know how quickly I can burn myself out.
Mhm.
And I'm sure we're both in that same way, where it's like, okay, you see the opening, but you don't always want to blast through it. It's like sometimes you have to set something else up and then go. And sometimes it's like I've had purple belts, finger crawling across my chest to set up something where it's like just subtle. And I'm like, I know what you're doing, asshole. I just have no idea how to stop it. So it's like there's certain little micro movements that you start to notice, and that's my life change has to be these micro movements. So it's not about like my my rally cry to go change the world. It's my rally cry to start pursuing a path and just making sure I'm in alignment with what I want out of life and jujitsu, and packaging all of it together. How can I create all of my passions? How can I connect it to this one thing? And my world is shrinking. It was like, I'm a writer, I'm a filmmaker, I'm a jiu-jitsu guy, I'm a triathlete, I'm a dad, I'm a stay-at-home dad, I'm a teacher, I'm a, all of these things. But then it was so wide that now it's getting more and more condensed to all of these skills that I have serve this jiu-jitsu community, I hope, or I see. And as you get more focused, that laser beam gets tighter, like you talked about, that laser focus, ordinary man, laser focus. I feel so much more purposeful, because everything serves this one thing, and there's a need for it and there's a desire for it. Whereas I was trying to make it happen in cycling, and there's not a desire for it. There was no interest in what I had to say. So am I going to tell myself I'm worthless and I'm just a waste of time? No, I just, people in this room, I shouted in this room and no one cared. So do I give up, or do I go to another room? And I'm finding my room. And to me, that has been the most empowering reason or result of me staying. It's not because, I beat up a blue belt, or, like any kind of result or what. No, it's like, I'm understanding my life more, and I'm understanding how not to jump at things. And I'm laughing at myself too. I think you mentioned these feints and different things that you can set up, and, armbar, it's right here. No, it's not, and so I know that. And the other day I did a fake, I shot in, I faked it, to get a reaction. And I got the reaction I wanted, where he sprawled and started to counter, but I was back up and I go, that's cool. Oh, I'm supposed to do something. So by the time I remembered I'm supposed to follow up, he was already scrambling to get a single and stuff. So I was like, oh, what an idiot, but it was funny. But there's a time where I would have been really hard on myself and be like, I'm embarrassed. This is pathetic. But that's the evolution.
Yeah. Yeah. You made an attempt. You saw a result. Now with the data that you've taken from that attempt, you assess it, you make some adjustments, and then you're going to try it again.
Amen. That's all this life is.
For sure.
And sometimes it takes good friendships to help you make that choice. But I'm really grateful for your friendship, and I know I want to have you back on, and hopefully you're down for that, because I just enjoy these conversations. And I think it's really important for people who aren't in the sport, who are in the sport. I get messages every once in a while that people will say, sometimes these messages, these conversations are what keeps them coming back to the sport, because it's just so hard. And when you're not hearing from someone, when you're not talking to someone about it that can help you reframe it, it's easy to walk out. It's one of the easiest sports to walk out of because of how difficult. I'd say Muay Thai is up there too. Any combat martial art is really easy to be like, maybe this isn't for me. But it's so much more rewarding to figure out why it is. And that's all we're trying to do in these conversations, and have really great connection, because it does help me remember my path when I talk to people like you. So JC, thank you. And I look forward to having you on again in the future. But as we close and before we go, where can people find you on social media?
Okay. Yeah. So my two biggest channels are going to be YouTube and Instagram. On YouTube, I'm the Tail of the Dragon, JC Gerrits. It's a budding YouTube channel where I talk about martial arts and personal growth and philosophy. Also do some breakdowns of some of Bruce Lee's greatest quotes. Would love to have you check out my channel, and please comment, like, and subscribe, all of that stuff. And then, of course, Instagram as well, JC_Gerrits, where I talk about similar things and post about personal growth and all of that. So I would love to have your support on those channels.
And I'll make sure to include those in the show description, so you can hyperlink and post those, or copy, and however you want to log on to Instagram or YouTube, and make sure you give him a follow, as I do. I'm a faithful subscriber as well as a follower of you, JC, and all that you're doing. And I really enjoy watching you grow and supporting you while you support me, because it is a two-way street. And you're one of those guys that I'm grateful to have, because you have been a constant voice of support and belief in me as I go through things that sometimes I don't have a ton of faith in. So this is another addition of why this community is so strong, and why it's important to have it, because when you're alone, it's a lot easier to walk away from things. But when you have people who see the world the way you see it, and who hold you accountable and want the best for you, it just hits different, and it does matter. So grateful for you, JC, and I hope you guys do give him a follow. And until next time, journey well, my friends. And as always, bye now.